It's no secret that the goddess of war and wisdom is my patron. I light up dang near every time I talk about her. So when my patrons told me that they really wanted a video on a few of her lesser known qualities from mythology and cult, of course I jumped on the opportunity. I tried to curate the list to include more obscure things that I either haven't mentioned in videos or in which the video that I did mention them hasn't done very well. If y'all like this one, I might consider doing more on other deities as well in the future. With that out of the way, let's take a look at 10 things you probably didn't know about Athena. Karate! Sunday the 6th was my birthday, and boy did you all show up for it. The stream on the 5th had an incredible show of support, and I would like to thank everyone who donated as well as all of you who showed up for Jen's triumphant return to the channel and my 1-year solo on YouTube anniversary celebration. Link is in the iCard if you missed it. It was a great discussion, and if you can get past the shower of super chats in the first half hour, we had a lot of fun. We also have our very first animated fan art submission this week from Mathematical Cabbage. Isn't it adorable? It's been forever since I got to show off some art, and man, this one did not disappoint. Thank you so much for your hard work, and anybody else who wants to submit fan art to the Discord, I feature any fan art submissions that I get that are safe for work, so feel free. Athena, like all of the Teoi, often gets pigeonholed into a few small roles that people think of as under her rulership. War and wisdom, sure, and some folks happen to know that she also has domain over weaving. But as I discussed in my video on domains, aspects, and epithets, the gods are much more than simple one-liners and short paragraphs that are used to describe them in mythology encyclopedias or online articles. They have a rich history of mythology and cult that spans over 1,000 years, and as such, there are bound to be treasures to uncover for folks who love to go digging in primary sources and scholarship. With this in mind, I've done my best to put together a collection that will be both useful for anyone who wishes to honor Athena in praxis and interesting for folks who just find the mythology and Hellenism intriguing from an intellectual perspective. I'll do my best to balance both. Also, I didn't really put these in any particular order, apart from the fact that some of them are a little more obscure than others, so the countdown format is more just for my own amusement. Number 10, she invented the plow for humanity. When most people think of Greece and agriculture, Demeter springs to mind immediately, and with good reason. She has dominion over the wheat and the flowering of it, as well as other fruiting and flowering plants for humanity's consumption. But according to Servius's commentary on the Aeneid, humans once planted and tilled by hand until Athena took pity on us and invented the plow in order to make things easier for us. The story goes that a young girl named Myrmix once lived in Attica and held Athena's favor until one fateful day her actions turned the goddess toward anger. Athena knew of Demeter's invention and gift of wheat to humanity, but saw how hard humans had to toil in order to till and harvest it by hand. She wanted to show humans that it could be done better, and set her great mind to work inventing the swing plow. Myrmix knew of her invention due to their closeness and stole the handle of it, stating in her pride that the wheat would only grow with the use of her invention, which was the only thing capable of turning the earth and easing the growth of the wheat. Athena, in her rightful rage at this insolence, transformed her into an ant for the rest of her days. Where Demeter in her motherly grace gave the humans food, Athena in her brilliance taught us more efficient ways of harvesting the food that we could grow. The gods tend to be interdependent in this way. If you garden or even just cook with a lot of grains as a Hellenist, take some time to thank Athena for this wondrous invention and the inspiration of those who came after. Number 9. She had an adopted son. Trigger warning, we're about to discuss attempted non-consensual hanky-panky between deities. I say attempted because the god in question didn't succeed, but if this is a trigger for you, or if the mention of certain bodily functions is, the timestamp on the screen will let you skip this section of the video. I covered this myth briefly in my video on the Athenian New Year, but not a whole lot of people have seen it, so I thought it was worth mentioning here. Hephaestus got a craving for godly flesh after his wife Aphrodite spurned him and decided that Athena's would do nicely, and so set about attempting to take her in a field. Athena, being far wiser than any of the gods except perhaps her father Zeus, managed to dodge his attempt. His seed spilled upon her leg and she cast it onto the earth, and given that mythology is weird and the gods can indeed do this, apparently, up sprang baby Erechteus. Athena adopted him unbeknownst to the other gods and stowed him away in a chest, hoping to make him immortal. She handed the chest over to the care of a daughter of Cecrops, and it forbade her from opening it. But, of course, she got curious, like mortals do, and disobeyed. A snake was coiled around the baby, and some sayings say that the serpent killed her in punishment. Though not immortal as she planned, he still became a hero as well as a king of Athens, and was said to have founded the Panathenaia festival in honor of his adopted mother. 8. She gave Bellerophon the bit to tame Pegasus. Yes, Disney, I said Bellerophon, not Hercules or Heracles. Pegasus was a wild stallion, born of Medusa's neck when she was slain by Perseus after she had been taken by Poseidon on the temple floor. It's well known that Poseidon was known as the father of horses under the epithet Poseidon Hippios, but far less known is Athena's role as Athena Hippeia. According to Pindar, Bellerophon could not overcome his desire to tame Pegasus. So magnificent and wild was the stallion, but all his efforts came in vain. Until he fell asleep on Athena's altar, and she came into his dreams, presented him with the golden bit, and told him to give his father Deimos an offering of a white bull, then use this bit to tame Pegasus. He went to a seer the next day, who confirmed the divine nature of his dream, then set about immediately following through on her commands. If you enjoy riding horses as a Hellenist, it might interest you to offer Athena for guidance on how to improve your art, or to choose the best bit, bridle, and other equipment for your equine companions. After all, the inventor of the art would know best. 7. In one variation of the myth, her Aegis is made of giant skin. Most people know of the Titanomachy, the great battle between the gods and the Titans that cemented Zeus's reign over gods and men. I've talked about it repeatedly on this channel. However, the Gigantomachy, a much later dating story with similar themes, often slips from people's minds when discussing ancient myth. In older versions of the story of Athena's birth, particularly Homer and Hesiod, it is said that Athena was born wearing her armor and shouting a war cry whole cloth from Zeus's head. However, in an alternative story regarding the Gigantomachy, it was said that she slayed the giant Pallas and fashioned her Aegis from his skin to protect herself during the war. During the course of this battle, she also threw the island of Sicily at the giant Enceladus, who was crushed and buried under Mount Etna on the island. Just a fun tidbit from that story. 6. She taught humanity how to weave. This might be less surprising to those of you who have been around the channel for a while or who saw my live stream on weaving and knitting during the American Revolutionary War, where I discussed this for a bit. I'm in the process of researching the intricate relationship between textiles, worship, the gods, and language in Greek myth and literature for an upcoming series on the topic, but for now, this is one of the more beautiful associations I personally have with the goddess in my own practice. It was said that she wove the clothes that she wore normally herself. She also wove the aforementioned Aegis out of the skin of the giant Pallas. The loom was said to be her gift to humanity. In fact, specifically her gift to human women, as it makes an appearance in the myth of Pandora. And she was said to be the one who bestowed the skill and grace in the craft to women who attempted it for their families. According to Susan Deacy in her great monograph on Athena, which I highly recommend by the way, it's actually pretty readable, professional weavers in ancient times would often dedicate their tools or tithe a portion of their profits to the goddess in exchange for her favor in their endeavors. I personally worship her under the traditional epithet ergane, or worker, and often use knitting, crochet, and weaving as a devotional activity in her honor in lieu of a traditional offering. She had a hand in metalworking. Yes, you heard that right. Though she herself did not work with metals the way that Hephaestus does and turned to him to make her weapons as all the other gods did, it was said that she was the one who brought that craft to humans themselves. The Homeric hymn to Hephaestus states, "Sing, clear-voiced muse of Hephaestus, famed for inventions, with bright-eyed Athena, he taught men glorious crafts throughout the world, men who before used to dwell in caves in the mountains like wild beasts. But now they have learned crafts through Hephaestus and the famed worker. Easily they live a peaceful life in their own houses for the whole year round. Be gracious, Hephaestus, and grant me success and prosperity." She was honored by those who were first learning the smithing crafts. If you work with metal or enjoy recreated armor and weaponry from history, might be good to thank Athena for helping Hephaestus bring the craft to mankind. 4. She attacked the Greeks after the Trojan War. Athena is best known for her intimate role in heroes' lives, particularly in the Iliad and the Odyssey. She was so deeply involved in the Trojan War that Ares, in a rage at her constant thwarting of his schemes against the Greeks, complained to Zeus that he favored her too much because she was born of him. However, afterward, the hero Aias, known to many as Ajax or Ajax, violated a woman's consent on the grounds of her temple in Sparta, and she, justifiably pissed about it, destroyed his fleet and ended his life. Some versions of the story include Poseidon helping her in this effort, splitting a rock that Aias took refuge on into to after she destroyed the ship with a lightning bolt. Regardless, needless to say, violating consent in a god's temple is a very, very bad idea, even in ancient times where their ideas of what consent were don't exactly match up to ours. I've covered that in past videos. 3. She invented the flute. Most people associate Apollon and the Musae with music, and rightfully so, but Apollon's primary focus was the lyre, gifted to him by his brother Hermes. Athena, according to Pindar, invented the flute. It was said that the cries of the Gorgons inspired her as Perseus reaped Medusa's head. Charming. The music was said to resemble the laments and painful cries of all the Gorgons as they died. Later mythographers state that Athena cast the flute away from herself and gave it to humanity because she disliked how playing it disfigured her face. Which, although vain and a bit sexist, I can kinda understand after having played the flute myself as a kid for a bit. Really do have to make a silly face to play the dang thing. 2. The third day of each lunar month was sacred to her. If you all are interested in a video on the lunar worship calendar of Athens, let me know down in the comments below after you're done with the video. The ancient Greeks were interesting in that they celebrated the birthdays of the gods every month, instead of on a specific day of the year. This makes a bit of sense when you consider the views on miasma, link in the iCard to my video on the topic if you don't know what I'm talking about, specifically around birth and death. The third day of every lunar month, after Numenia and the Agathos-Daimons Day, was dedicated to Athena, and households in Athens would make sure offerings to her on this day were given if they could. 1. She went out of her way to tell Diomedes to wound Aphrodite in the Trojan War. It's no surprise to folks in my audience that Aphrodite was considered a goddess of madness, as well as much of what we would call love in the modern day. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that a virgin goddess of wisdom would end up beefing with her during a conflict she partially caused. Athena takes away the mist from Diomedes' eyes so that he can see the gods fighting on the battlefield in the Iliad, then proceeds to give him very specific orders on what to do with the gift. He of good courage now, Diomedes, to fight with the Trojans, since I have put inside you the chest of strength of your father incredulous. I have taken away the mist from your eyes, that before now was there, so you may well recognize the god and mortal. Therefore now, if a god making trial of you comes hither, do not you do battle head on with the gods. Immortal, not with the rest, but only if Aphrodite, Zeus's daughter, comes fighting. Her at least you may stab with the sharp bronze. Note how Homer disagrees with Hesiod on the nature of Aphrodite's birth here, but that's neither here nor there. He follows her orders and stabs Aphrodite in the side, which causes her ichor, which is what the gods have instead of blood because they don't eat, to run out on the battlefield and for her to flee. She runs to Hades and rages about how frustrated she is by the situation, and over the course of this section is effectively told that she doesn't have a place in warfare and should stick to the domestic arch. Ouch. This is interesting considering that she did actually have a war cult in Sparta. Then again, every god had a war cult in Sparta. It was Sparta. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed some of the unusual stuff that I've come across in my wanderings about my glorious patron goddess. If you're new here, stab the subscribe button and weave yourself a peplos from the skin of the light. Drop down into the comments and let me know if you'd be interested in seeing more obscure mythology and praxis videos like this in the future, as well as which of these you knew and didn't know from the list. Or just make fun of me for not being a Greek and say I'm appropriating by talking about the Greek gods if that's your speed. Go ahead, y'all are gonna do it anyway. I don't know why. You're clearly lost if you're still here. Special thanks as well to my patrons. You all requested this topic this week when I came to you, clueless as to what to cover given my recent exhaustion and difficulty in dealing with the heavier topic I planned that will likely be the video for next week or the week after. You all funded the subscription to JSTOR and even bought some of the primary sources I read for this video, as well as donated one of the books that I used for sourcing as well. Thank you so much for your continuous support. May the cycle of reciprocity between us ever remain positive. And remember, Athena is amazing, and we're stronger together.